For those stumbling across the Xbox Live Summer of Arcade special,
Hey, what are we watching?
This game might have caught your eye like it did mine. There's not much to Limbo on the surface.
I think this guy's afraid of the camera.
Platformer, not unlike Braid of 2 years back.
Oh, no music. Oh, that's a good touch. I get it, but, like, you know, you could have...
avoiding traps and pitfalls and using the environment to figure out how to do it. Limbo is
You're just gonna kind of just stare straight ahead that whole time, huh? Alright, okay.
Popular on cruise ships, so get that idea out of your head right now. Of course, don't...
Okay, fine. I don't think I'm gonna let that slide anymore. Let's do this proper, shall we?
Limbo is the very basis of an atmospheric puzzle platformer. Simple controls, and puzzles that aren't complete brain teasers, but can easily get you scratching your head on a few occasions. What Limbo showcases in spades is a stifling and enigmatic atmosphere. The world is bleak, violent, and dark, cast entirely in black and white silhouette, as you traverse its hellscape through various environments as the world crumbles around you. Limbo is one of my favorite games of all time, has aged surprisingly well, and despite being the first of 2 showings from Danish studio Playdead, is often considered the more iconic and memorable of 2 games that are pretty similar overall. It goes for varying and decent prices on about any platform you can imagine, mobile included, without losing an ounce of its charm. But that's not all you want to hear, is it?
Yeah, honestly, I don't know if it counts as spoiling anything for a game that's this old and nothing really to spoil, but the rules still apply all the same. So I'm going to get into exactly why this is a game that I remember fondly, even years before I started my very first YouTube series.
Limbo was introduced to me as a free demo on Xbox Live's Summer of Arcade, back in 2010 when I still had a functioning Xbox 360. The atmosphere and terrifyingly bleak, nihilistic visuals drew me in as something I'd yet to see in a game. And upon reaching the end of the demo, being greeted with "Will you let the boy die?" I immediately dove for my wallet, needing to see where this game went. And where it went is, well, a bit confusing and quiet, but man if it wasn't one hell of a ride.
Hell, it was one of the games that I needed to talk about after I was playing it. Even with my laughable nothing of an internet presence at the time, I took more than a few weeks to write up a script for this that ended up being like 4 minutes long, and all recorded in that god-awful resolution using this... thing. Ugh, what kind of inputs did this thing use anyway? Ugh, component cables! Ugh, I think one of them touched me.
Don't tell me this game doesn't stand out. In an age of Ermagerd graphics and colors, Limbo says fuck that, casting the entire game in black and white with a foggy haze everywhere. The aesthetic matches perfectly with the game's first few areas. A deserted, shadowy forest, inhabited by murderous children, corpses, bear traps, and a giant fucking spider that terrorizes you for the majority of the section. This thing's practically the game's mascot. Like, you ask anyone about Limbo, and this spider is all they ever want to talk about.
To me, my most primal fear was eked out by this massive neon hotel sign. There's something about urban decay that has always rubbed me the wrong way. But about everyone else, the game seems to start and end with that spider. Not the saw blades, or the brain worms, just the spider. You know the game has sentry guns in it? I bet you forgot it has sentry guns.
The dark tone doesn't stop at the literal palette and environment. The game is gory for something cast in silhouette. You're playing as a literal child for one. Sure, a glowy-eyed shadow of a child, but a child human nonetheless. And little Billy here doesn't exactly just say ouch and fall over when he gets hit. Prepare to watch him lose limbs and body parts, ragdolling in various directions as he gets literally torn apart by the various hazards.
Kinda screwed up one of my last jumps on stream and resigned to my fate with the gun here, and then recoiled in horror after watching myself get ripped apart. Just... oh god! Shit, that's a fucking intestine! Jesus Christ!
The game's bleakness is compounded by its soundtrack, going for low, atmospheric tones when it plays, and pure silence when it doesn't, which is quite often. The game's quiet ambience is at the forefront. In fact, purposefully staying in the background, the one time that I really notice it is when it syncs up with the game's sound work. Even when the sound remains distant, echo, and creepy, the music can perfectly highlight what's happening. And the final touch is when the timers for the gravity shift are suddenly incorporated into the music. It's one of the most clever audio teaching moments I've heard in a game. Also, the last one, really. Limbo boils down to a puzzle platformer in pure gameplay. You run, jump, push, pull, and activate switches. There's a reason it works so well on mobile. With such limited control over your character, the main meat of your skill and challenge comes in the form of solving puzzles using physics and platforms, and reacting quicker to hazards that come your way. And boy are there a lot of them! You'll learn very quickly what can and cannot kill you as you're impaled on spikes, crushed by machines, drowned, decapitated, shredded, or merely just fall down too far. Death is a common but forgiving occurrence in this game, easily as it happens. You'll just respawn a mere few seconds or so back in progress, as the game's checkpoints are frequent and numerous.
Which is great, because the game loves being total bullshit at times. There are innocuous objects that'll kill you, split-second timings with no warning, solving a puzzle with a really short timer that you can only try once, or my least favorite, knowing that you have to do something else before you start a different task. Like knocking over the scaffold here before you proceed right in this area, or pulling this card under the switch before you solve the puzzle that came right before it. Trial and error is a thing, and I'll fully admit that a lot of these do seem unfair, but at least the game is kind enough to let you try again without really much hassle.
However, if you're the type who likes to pay extra close attention to the environment, you might take some immediate notice of certain clues being fed to you before you end up in a trap that might seem like it was out of nowhere. You can see a tripwire in a pit with a block suspended above it, letting you know that you should probably let it be activated first before you dive in. You may see weird munchers on the ceiling scarfing down a brainworm far before you ever encounter one, letting you know how you can effectively remove one before you come across it. A child's corpse sitting in the light might have a shriveled up brainworm lodged in it, showcasing that light can affect those worms. You might see a small weird creature munching down on some glowing mushrooms before you come across another one that you'll need to repurpose for your own gain to continue. Most everything is shown to you before you realize it's something you should be on the lookout for. Physics play more into puzzles than you'd think, and it can be tricky to realize that momentum has to be considered before tackling the timing of a jump, like swinging on a chain to give it some sway before you move it into place, or sliding a wheel or cart uphill, and stopping right before the end to let that upward momentum give you just a bit more time to reach the goal. Close shaves are everywhere, and some are more frustrating than others. It's not always perfectly fair though. There's at least two major psychological fuck yous that this game throws at you that I can recall easily. The first is the crushers with the buttons underneath. Everything about game design and life design will tell you that the button-shaped object will probably trigger the drop. So you move closer to jump over the button and bam, crushed. So you jump on the button, then move to the smaller one next to it with the same button design. You leap onto the button and boom, crushed. That time the button object was the trigger. It's not quite rage platformer levels of BS, but it's a bit of a slap in the face.
The other example isn't so much of a gameplay thing as it is the game metaphorically flipping you the bird. If you read any promo materials for the game, you'll know that the entire story that you're being given is that you're looking for your sister. Well, after getting through that fairly tricky part, you enter the forest again and see a clearing. There she is! You approach her to presumably end up finishing the game and get wrecked, nerd! Back into hell you go!
The story is kind of where everything gets thrown apart. There isn't really a story here. The ending is open to interpretation, with plenty of theories being thrown around, and Playdead being completely mum to providing anyone a direct answer. My personal takeaway is that your character and the sister that you've been looking for have died in a car accident. This visual in the final scene of the boy crashing into what I assume to be water looks so much like being thrown through a pane of glass that nearly every guide I've seen refers to this part as breaking through the glass. Yet afterward, you end up right where you started, and what we assume to be your sister seems shocked by your arrival before the credits roll. Not to mention this lovely title screen shot that shows some indistinguishable shapes on the ground being heavily swarmed by flies. Shapes and swarms in the exact same spot that you and the girl were standing before the credits rolled. Game's dark, yo! If you don't just want to march to the ambiguous finish, you can search for hidden eggs by heading off the beaten path. Some of these go against gamer instinct, like heading left at the very start of the game, grabbing a pointless looking rope in areas that you wouldn't seem to need to use it, or wandering through dark caves. The eggs are also privy to some foreknowledge bullshit, such as the one where you need to rotate the giant O on the hotel sign to a specific spot, so when you reach the giant hotel sign at the end of the game, there's a drawer containing the egg that you can pull open. If that's not garbage enough, you can always try to get the egg granted you for completing the game within 5 or fewer deaths. Or 0 deaths if you really hate yourself. Keep in mind that these eggs do absolutely nothing but grant achievements if you're playing on a system that has them. Otherwise, it's just bragging rights.
Limbo might be Nihilism the platformer, but there's something that no other game besides ones made by Play did that Limbo has been able to capture again in me, making it one of my favorite games of all time. I bought it on 360, I bought it on my PC, I bought it on my phone, and I'll be buying it on my Switch too. It's seriously a massive fave, and something that I come back to fondly every time. No surprises here, Limbo gets an unquestionable Go rating from me. The style and atmosphere has lended the game to a nearly timeless feel, and even the more frustrating parts of the game still feel like they're likely to exist within that universe. Unless you have something against puzzle platformers or existential misery in video game form, you can't go wrong with picking Limbo up after it's been out for so many years. Well, I appreciate you making this stop, and hopefully I'll be seeing you on the next one.
So, do you enjoy Limbo as much as I do? Do you consider it pretentious twaddle too full of itself to let you in on the story? Do you think it's a work of artistic brilliance in game form? Or just a rage platformer with a bachelor's degree? Let it all out in the comments. Come watch me live on twitch.tv/chaosd1 if you're not doing so already. Attend my JRPG-focused Weeaboo Wednesday streams. You can watch me cook with my shitty laptop mic and camera, or just get frustrated by my complete lack of a coherent schedule. You can even watch Indie Stop debut live on there, on the appropriate Friday at noon Eastern, right before it goes officially live on YouTube. If Twitch isn't telling you I'm live, Twitter probably should, where you can follow my most often used personal account at ChaosD1, or if you don't give a shit about me badmouthing YouTube's idiotic experiments, my promotional accounts of at MMO_grinder and at IndieStop. That's IND1E stop. Because D1. Get it? I'll see myself out. Remember, I'm always willing to hear suggestions for indie games that you want to see covered in the show. I have plenty of potential titles to look at, but I am always up for new stuff and suggestions. If you want to force your way into the queue, I have my Patreon that you can choose to support the show with at tiers specific to Indie Stop and MMO Grinder, like early access to Indie Stop episodes before they go up in the Friday time slot, giving direct suggestions to me to more or less force your way into the queue, or have me make a pained attempt to pronounce your name in the credits. In this episode, I'd like to give a verbal thank you to my raid leader and higher supporters, Nate McPherson, Arthur D. Gonzalez-Martin, Neander, Kaizme, Sonic Rose, and A. Smith. Thanks for watching and supporting, and I'll see you on the next video.
What do you know? Still works.